The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Locklear mansion, each droplet a reminder of the cold distance that had settled between William Locklear and his wife of 6 months, Loria Kenton Locklear. She sat at the far end of the mahogany dining table, picking at her breakfast, while stealing glances at her husband, who was absorbed in his tablet, reviewing quarterly reports, even at 7 in the morning. William Locklear was everything the business world feared and respected. 32 years old, CEO of Locklear Industries, worth billions, and possessing an ice-cold demeanor that could freeze hell itself. His dark hair was always perfectly styled, his suits impeccably tailored, and his gray eyes held the warmth of winter steel. He had built his empire from the ashes of his father's smaller company, turning it into a global conglomerate through sheer ruthlessness and brilliant strategy. Their marriage had been arranged by their families, a merger of old money and new power. The Kentons needed financial backing for their failing textile business, and the Locklears wanted the social prestige that came with the Kenton name. Loria had been sacrificed on the altar of family duty, married to a man who barely acknowledged her existence. "I have meetings all day," William said without looking up from his screen, his voice carrying its usual frigid tone. "Don't wait up." Loria's heart clenched. It was always the same. Brief, cold exchanges that felt more like business transactions than conversations between husband and wife. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and watched as he rose from the table, straightening his navy tie with mechanical precision. As he walked past her chair, Loria caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive and masculine, that made her pulse quicken despite everything. For a moment, she thought he might pause, might say something more, but he continued toward the door without a backward glance. "William," she called softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He stopped, his hand on the doorframe, but didn't turn around. "Yes?" The word hung in the air like a challenge. Loria wanted to tell him that she dreamed of him again last night, that despite his coldness, she found herself falling for the man she'd married. She wanted to ask if there was any chance he could ever feel something, anything, for her. "Have a good day," she said instead, her courage failing her. He gave a curt nod and disappeared into the hallway, leaving her alone with the echoing silence of their cavernous home. Ned Williams had been William Locklear's executive assistant for 7 years, and in that time, he learned to read his boss better than anyone. As William stormed through the offices of Locklear Industries that morning, Ned could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clutched just a fraction tighter than usual. "Your 10 o'clock is here, sir," Ned said, falling into step beside William as they walked toward his corner office. "And your wife called." William's stride faltered for just a moment, so briefly that anyone else would have missed it. But Ned caught it, just as he caught the way William's fingers tightened around his phone. "What did she want?" William asked, his tone carefully neutral. "She wanted to know if you'd be home for dinner. I told her you had the charity gala tonight." William stopped walking entirely. "The charity gala is tomorrow night." "Yes, sir, I know." Their eyes met, and for a moment, Ned saw something flicker in his boss's expression. Regret, perhaps, or longing. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by William's usual mask of indifference. "Reschedule my afternoon meetings," William said quietly. "I'll go home early today." "Yes, sir," Ned replied, making a note on his tablet. He'd been hoping for this breakthrough for months. But William's gesture came too late. When he arrived home at 4 o'clock, the earliest he'd been back in months, he found Loria in the garden with Jenny Hartwell, her best friend from college. Jenny had always disapproved of the marriage, viewing William as a cold-hearted businessman who'd stolen her friend's chance at true love. "Loria, darling, you simply must come to Paris with me next month," Jenny was saying as William approached through the French doors. "You need to get away from all this." She gestured dismissively at the mansion around them. William stopped in the doorway, unseen by the two women. He'd planned to surprise Loria, to suggest they have dinner together, just the two of them. But Jenny's words made him freeze. "I couldn't leave William," Loria replied softly. "We're married." Jenny snorted. "Married? The man barely speaks to you. When was the last time he told you he loved you? When was the last time he even touched you?" William's hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to step forward, to defend himself. But Jenny's words struck too close to home. He hadn't told Loria he loved her because he was terrified of her reaction. He'd grown up in a house where love was seen as weakness, where his father had taught him that emotions were liabilities in business and in life. "He doesn't love me," Loria whispered, and the pain in her voice made William's chest tighten. "I know he doesn't." Sometimes I think he wishes he'd never married me at all." "Then why stay?" Jenny pressed. "You're young, beautiful, intelligent. You could have any man you wanted." William stepped back into the shadows of the house, unable to listen anymore. He retreated to his study and buried himself in work, but Loria's words echoed in his mind. "He doesn't love me." If only she knew how wrong she was. The charity gala the next evening should have been perfect. Loria looked stunning in a midnight blue gown that brought out her eyes, and William felt a surge of pride as they entered the ballroom together. For once they looked like a real couple, his hand on the small of her back, her fingers resting lightly on his arm. But their fragile progress was shattered by the appearance of Sam Morrison, a rival businessman who'd been trying to acquire several of Locklear Industries' subsidiaries. Sam was handsome in a conventional way, charming and smooth-talking, everything William was not. "Mrs. Locklear," Sam said, approaching them with a practiced smile, "you look absolutely radiant tonight. Your husband is a lucky man." William's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, merely nodding curtly at Sam before being pulled away by other business associates. He glanced back to see Sam leading Loria onto the dance floor, making her laugh at something he whispered in her ear. From across the room, William watched his wife in another man's arms, and something dark and possessive unfurled in his chest. He'd never been jealous before. He'd never had anything worth being jealous over. But seeing Loria's genuine smile, the way she seemed to come alive under Sam's attention, made him realize what he'd been denying for months. He was in love with his wife. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, leaving him struggling to breathe. He loved her laugh, her gentle nature, the way she tried so hard to make their marriage work, despite his coldness. He loved her, and he was losing her to a man who could give her what William thought he couldn't: warmth, affection, the words she needed to hear. When the dance ended, Sam walked Loria back toward William, but not before pressing something into her hand: a business card. "If you ever need someone to talk to," Sam said quietly, "don't hesitate to call." William saw red. "I think you've monopolized enough of my wife's time tonight, Morrison." "William?" Loria gasped at his harsh tone, but he was already walking away, unable to trust himself not to do something he'd regret. They rode home in silence, the tension in the car thick enough to cut with a knife. Once inside the mansion, Loria finally exploded. "How could you be so rude to Sam? He was just being kind." "Kind?" William's voice was dangerously low. "Is that what you call it when a man tries to seduce another man's wife?" "Seduce?" Loria stared at him in disbelief. "We were dancing, William, having a conversation. You know, the thing married couples usually do." "Don't," he warned, his control hanging by a thread. "Don't what? Don't point out that we never talk? Don't mention that you treat me like a stranger in our own home? Don't remind you that in 6 months of marriage, you've never once told me how you feel about anything? You want to know how I feel?" William stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "I feel like I'm drowning. Every day I watch you try to make this work while I destroy it piece by piece because I don't know how to be what you need." Loria's breath caught at the raw admission, but before she could respond, William's walls slammed back up. "Go to bed, Loria. We both have early mornings." She stood there for a long moment, tears threatening to fall, before turning and walking up the stairs without another word. The next morning, Loria was gone. William found the note on his pillow, brief and devastating in its simplicity. "William, I can't live like this anymore. I thought I could make you love me, but I realize now that I can't force feelings that don't exist. I'm going to stay with Jenny for a while. Please don't look for me. I need time to figure out what I want from my life, Loria." His hands shook as he read the words again, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. She was gone. The one person who'd managed to crack through his defenses, who'd made him feel something other than cold ambition, had walked away because he'd been too much of a coward to tell her the truth. Ned found him an hour later, still sitting on the edge of the bed with the note clutched in his fists. "Sir," Ned said carefully, "your 9 o'clock meeting is here." "Cancel it," William said without looking up. "Cancel everything." "For how long, sir?" "Until I find her." Ned had never heard his boss's voice break before, and the sound of it made his own chest tighten with sympathy. Chapter 6: The Search. Jenny's apartment was the first place William looked, but her doorman claimed she wasn't home. William didn't believe him for a second. Jenny had probably paid the man to turn him away. He tried calling, but Loria's phone went straight to voicemail. Loria, it's me, he said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. It had been 3 days since she'd left, and he hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Please come home. We need to talk. There are things I should have said months ago, things you need to know. But there was no response. William threw himself into the search with the same single-minded determination he'd once reserved for hostile takeovers. He hired private investigators, called in favors from contacts across the country, and personally visited every place he could think of that Loria might go. Ned watched his boss deteriorate with growing concern. William had always been driven, but this was different. This was desperation. "Sir," Ned said carefully on the 5th day, "perhaps you should consider that Mrs. Locklear might need some space right now. Maybe if you gave her time." "She thinks I don't love her," William interrupted, his voice raw. "She left because she believes I married her for business and nothing else. How can I give her space when she's out there thinking I don't care if she ever comes back? Then tell her the truth, sir." William looked up from his desk, his eyes bloodshot and haunted. "What if it's too late? What if she doesn't believe me? Then at least you'll know you tried." It was Sam Morrison who finally gave William the lead he needed, though not intentionally. William had confronted the other man at his office, his usual composure completely shattered. "Where is she?" William demanded, slamming his hands on Sam's desk. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Sam replied smoothly. But there was something in his eyes that made William's blood boil. "My wife, you bastard. I know she's been in contact with you." Sam leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing at his lips. "Even if she had been, why would I tell you? You obviously don't deserve her if you can't even keep track of your own wife. If you've touched her, what? You'll destroy me?" Sam laughed. "Face it, Locklear, you're a cold, emotionless machine. Loria deserves someone who can actually love her, someone who isn't afraid to show her how he feels. Maybe it's time you accepted that she's better off without you." The words hit their mark, and for a moment, William's composure cracked completely. Sam saw his opening and pressed his advantage. "She called me, 2 nights ago, crying. She said she'd made a mistake marrying you, that she'd wasted the best years of her life on a man who would never love her back." The lie was expertly crafted, designed to devastate, and it worked. William staggered backward, the color draining from his face. "She's staying at the Grandview Hotel downtown," Sam continued, his voice faux sympathetic. "Room 412. But if you have any decency left, you'll leave her alone. Let her find someone who can make her happy." William didn't remember leaving Sam's office or driving across the city. He found himself standing outside the Grandview Hotel as the sun set, his hands shaking as he tried to work up the courage to go inside. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway, and William's footsteps seemed to echo like gunshots in the silence. He stood outside the door for several minutes, his fist raised to knock, before finally gathering the courage to rap softly on the wood. "Who is it?" came Loria's voice from inside, and the sound of it nearly brought him to his knees. "It's me," he said, his voice barely audible. "Please, Loria, I need to see you." There was a long pause, and then the sound of locks being undone. The door opened slowly, revealing Loria in a simple sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired, older somehow, and William's heart broke at the sight. "William," she said softly, "how did you find me?" "Sam told me where you were." The admission tasted bitter on his tongue. Something flickered across Loria's face. Surprise, perhaps, or confusion. "Sam? But I haven't spoken to him since the gala." William's brow furrowed. "He said you called him 2 nights ago." "I didn't call anyone, William. I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with my life." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Sam had lied, manipulated the situation to drive a wedge between them. But that revelation could wait. Right now, all that mattered was the woman standing in front of him. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Please, I need to tell you something." Loria hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let him enter. The hotel room was small and impersonal, nothing like the home they'd shared, and William hated that she'd felt the need to hide here rather than stay where she belonged. "Loria," he began, then stopped, the words he'd rehearsed 1,000 times suddenly inadequate. "I need you to know that Sam lied to you at the gala. He wasn't just being kind. He wants to take you away from me. He's been trying to acquire parts of my company, and he sees you as a way to get to me." "I know," she said quietly, settling on the edge of the bed. "I'm not naive, William. I could see what he was doing. But at least he is paying attention to me. At least he made me feel like I existed. The words were like daggers to William's heart. You do exist. God, Loria, you're all I think about. You're the first thing on my mind when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I go to sleep. Then why? She asked, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. Why do you treat me like a stranger? Why do you act like our marriage is nothing more than a business arrangement? William ran his hands through his hair, the perfect styling finally giving way to his distress. Because I'm terrified, he admitted. Because I've never felt anything like this before, and I don't know how to handle it. Feel like what? He looked up at her then, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. I love you, Loria. I've been in love with you since our wedding day, maybe even before that. But I grew up thinking love was weakness, that showing emotion would make me vulnerable. I thought if I kept my distance, if I stayed cold and professional, I could protect us both. Loria's breath caught. Protect us from what? From me ruining everything, he said brokenly. From me destroying the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I don't know how to love someone properly. My father never showed affection, never said the words. I thought that's just how men in our family were supposed to be. Oh, William, she whispered, reaching out to touch his face. He leaned into her palm like a man dying of thirst. I know I don't deserve another chance, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. But please, don't leave me. Don't give up on us. I'll spend the rest of my life learning how to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Just as Loria opened her mouth to respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my father, she said, looking puzzled. He never calls unless it's an emergency. She answered the phone, putting it on speaker so William could hear. Loria, sweetheart, where are you? I need to speak with you and William immediately. We're at the Grandview Hotel, she said, glancing at William uncertainly. Dad, what's wrong? You sound upset. I'm coming up, her father said, his voice grim. Room 412, right? We need to talk about why you two really got married. The line went dead, leaving William and Loria staring at each other in confusion. What did he mean, why we really got married? Loria asked. It was arranged by our families for business reasons. That's what I thought too, William said slowly, but something cold was settling in his stomach. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Loria's father, Robert Kenton, entered looking haggard and guilty. Behind him was an older woman William didn't recognize, elegant, with silver hair and familiar gray eyes. William, the woman said softly, you look so much like your father. I'm sorry, William said, rising from his chair, but I don't believe we've met. The woman exchanged a look with Robert Kenton, who sighed heavily. Son, Robert said to William, this is Margaret Kenton, my sister. Your mother. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. That's impossible, William said slowly. My mother died when I was 2 years old. No, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't die. I was forced to give you up. Loria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. If she's William's mother, and she's my father's sister, then that means... You're first cousins, Robert finished heavily. The marriage was arranged not for business reasons, but because Margaret has been trying to find a way back into your life for 30 years, William. When she learned about the Kenton family's financial troubles, she saw an opportunity. She convinced your father, who never knew she was still alive, that marrying you to a Kenton would be advantageous. She thought if you were family, she'd have a chance to know you again. And after saying all of that, William sank back into his chair, his mind reeling. You've been alive all this time? Your father told you I was dead because I left him, Margaret explained, her voice breaking. He was abusive, William, controlling and violent. When you were 2, I tried to take you with me, but he had too much power, too many resources. He threatened to have me killed if I ever tried to contact you again. So I stayed away, but I never stopped loving you or wanting to be part of your life. So our entire marriage, Loria said faintly, was orchestrated by your mother so she could get close to you again? I didn't know you were cousins when I suggested the arrangement, Margaret said quickly. I honestly thought Robert was just a business associate, not family. When I realized the truth, I tried to stop the wedding, but it was too late. You'd already fallen in love with each other. We had? Loria asked, looking at William with wide eyes. Margaret smiled through her tears. It was obvious to anyone who cared to look. The way William would watch you when he thought no one was looking. The way you'd light up whenever he entered a room. You were both fighting your feelings, but it was clear you cared for each other. William felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Not only had he discovered his mother was alive, but their entire marriage had been built on a web of deceptions and half-truths. "There's something else," Robert said quietly. "The financial troubles with our textile business, they were manufactured. Margaret has been secretly supporting our family for years, making sure Loria had everything she needed. The arranged marriage was her way of giving you both what she thought you wanted, each other." "I need some air," William said abruptly, heading for the door. "William, wait," Loria called after him, but he was already gone. She found him on the hotel roof, standing at the edge of the building, looking out over the city lights. The wind whipped through his hair, and his shoulders were rigid with tension. "Are you angry?" she asked quietly, approaching him slowly. "I don't know what I am," he admitted without turning around. "My whole life has been a lie. My mother's been alive all these years, watching from a distance. Our marriage was orchestrated by someone else's guilty conscience. I don't even know what's real anymore." "I'm real," Loria said, moving to stand beside him. "What I feel for you is real. What you just told me downstairs, that was real too, wasn't it?" Finally, he looked at her, and she saw the vulnerability in his eyes that he'd kept hidden for so long. "That's the only thing I'm sure of. I love you." "Loria, that feeling isn't manufactured or arranged or manipulated. It's the truest thing I've ever known." "Then that's all that matters," she said, taking his hand. "I don't care why we got married anymore. I only care about why we stay married." "And why is that?" he asked, a small smile finally breaking through his anguish. "Because despite everything, the coldness, the misunderstandings, the people trying to tear us apart, we found each other. We found love in the middle of all that chaos." William pulled her into his arms then, holding her tightly against his chest, as though he'd never let her go again. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry for being so cold, for making you think I didn't care. I'm sorry for all the time we wasted." "We didn't waste it," she said, pulling back to look at him. "We needed that time to find our way to this moment, to find our way to each other." He kissed her then, pouring months of suppressed longing and love into the connection between them. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "So what happens now?" Loria asked. "Do we go back to the way things were?" "No," William said firmly. "We go forward, together. No more walls, no more coldness. I want to learn how to be the husband you deserve, and I want you to help me learn how to love properly." The confrontation with Sam Morrison came 2 days later. William arrived at Sam's office with his lawyer, Ned, and a folder full of evidence documenting Sam's attempts to manipulate both his business and his marriage. "Hello, Sam," William said, his voice carrying its old ice, but now it was controlled, purposeful. "I believe we have some things to discuss." Sam's confident facade cracked when he saw the folder. "I don't know what you think you have, but—" "Corporate espionage," William interrupted smoothly. "Attempted fraud, harassment of my wife. Should I continue?" The meeting was brief and decisive. Sam's company would cease all attempts to acquire Locklear Industries subsidiaries. He would stay away from both William and Loria permanently, and in exchange, William wouldn't pursue criminal charges. "You always were a cold bastard, Locklear," Sam spat as he signed the agreement. "Yes," William agreed, "but now I'm a cold bastard with something worth protecting." Meeting his mother properly was surreal. Margaret had kept scrapbooks of his life, newspaper articles about his business successes, photos from social events, anything she could find that would help her feel connected to the son she'd been forced to abandon. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness," she said as they sat in the garden of the Locklear mansion. Loria had insisted Margaret stay with them while they all figured out how to move forward. "I know I can't make up for 30 years of absence." "You were protecting yourself," William said slowly. He was still processing everything, still learning how to reconcile the mother he'd grieved for with the woman sitting across from him. "And you were protecting me, in your own way. I should have fought harder." "Against my father?" William shook his head. "I knew him, remember? He would have destroyed you completely if you'd tried. At least this way, you survived. You're here now." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "You're so much stronger than I was at your age. But you have something I never had. Someone who loves you unconditionally." She smiled at Loria, who was bringing them tea. "Don't make my mistakes, William. Don't let pride or fear keep you from accepting the love she's offering." The changes didn't happen overnight. William had spent 30 years building walls around his heart, and tearing them down was a slow, sometimes painful process. But he was determined to try. He started small, calling Loria during the day just to hear her voice, bringing her flowers for no reason, asking about her dreams and plans for the future. He was awkward at first, stilted in his attempts at romance, but Loria was patient. "You don't have to be perfect," she told him one evening as they walked through their garden together. "I don't need grand gestures or poetry. I just need you to let me in." "I'm trying," he said, squeezing her hand. "It's harder than I thought it would be." The best things usually are. The first time he told her he loved her without prompting, just because he felt it and wanted her to know, was 3 weeks after she'd moved back home. They were having breakfast, and she was laughing at something Ned had said over the phone about a disastrous client meeting. "I love you," William said suddenly, interrupting her laughter. She looked at him with surprise and delight. "What brought that on?" He said. "You were laughing. You have the most beautiful laugh, and I realized I want to spend the rest of my life finding ways to hear it." The smile she gave him was brighter than the sun. Not everyone was happy about the couple's reconciliation. Jenny Hartwell arrived from Paris in a fury, having heard about Loria's return to the marriage. "Have you completely lost your mind?" she demanded, cornering Loria at a charity luncheon. "He's the same man who ignored you for months, who made you feel worthless. One apology doesn't change his fundamental nature." "People can change, Jenny," Loria said calmly, though her friend's words stung. "Men like William Locklear don't change. They just get better at manipulation. He's probably just scared of what a divorce might cost him." Unfortunately, William overheard the last part of the conversation as he approached their table. Jenny's words hit him like a physical blow, awakening all his old insecurities about his worthiness of Loria's love. "Jenny," Loria said warningly, seeing the stricken look on her husband's face. "It's fine," William said, his voice carefully controlled. "I just came to tell you I have to leave early. Something came up at the office." But Loria knew better. She could see the walls starting to rebuild themselves behind his eyes, could see him retreating into the cold, distant man he used to be. The next few days were tense. William threw himself back into work with single-minded intensity, staying at the office until late and leaving before Loria woke up. When she confronted him about it, he was politely distant. "I have responsibilities, Loria. The company won't run itself." "The company ran fine before we got back together. This is about what Jenny said, isn't it?" "Jenny said what a lot of people are probably thinking," he replied, not meeting her eyes. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I haven't really changed." "Do you believe that?" The question hung in the air between them. William looked at her then, really looked, and saw the hurt in her eyes, the fear that he was slipping away from her again. "No," he said quietly, "but I'm scared that you'll wake up one day and realize she's right. That you deserve someone who can love you easily, naturally, without having to work so hard at it." "William," Loria said, moving closer to him, "love isn't supposed to be easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't be valuable. I don't want someone who loves me naturally. I want someone who chooses to love me every single day, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Even when I'm cold and difficult, and don't know how to show you how I feel?" "Even then," she confirmed, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "Because when you do show me, when you call me in the middle of the day just to hear my voice, or when you tell me you love me for no reason other than you want me to know, it means everything to me. It means more than it would if it came easy to you." Their newfound understanding was put to the test when William had to travel to London for 2 weeks on business. It was the longest they'd been apart since Loria had come back, and both were nervous about it. "I'll call you every day," William promised as they stood in the airport. "I know you will," Loria replied, but he could see the worry in her eyes. "What is it?" "Jenny's still in town," she admitted. "She's been calling, asking me to meet her for drinks, to talk about our friendship. I think she's planning another intervention." William's jaw tightened. "You don't have to see her if you don't want to." "She's my oldest friend, William. I can't just cut her out of my life because she doesn't approve of my marriage." "Then promise me you'll remember what we talked about. Promise me you won't let her make you doubt what we have." "I promise," she said. But they both knew Jenny could be very persuasive when she wanted to be. Jenny struck on the 5th day of William's trip, inviting Loria to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. She came armed with ammunition, articles about William's business practices, stories about his past relationships, anything she could find to prove her point that he was incapable of true love. "Look at this," Jenny said, sliding a tablet across the table. "An interview from 3 years ago where he literally says that emotional attachments are liabilities in business. He said marriage was an unnecessary complication, that he never intended to burden himself with. Loria stared at the screen, her heart sinking. The interview was real, the quotes accurate. 3 years ago, William had indeed said those things. People change, Jenny, she said weakly. Do they? Or do they just get better at saying what people want to hear? Jenny leaned forward, her voice intense. Loria, I love you like a sister. I've watched you settle for scraps of affection from a man who sees you as a business acquisition. You deserve so much more. He tells me he loves me every day now, Loria protested. Because he has to. Because you almost left him, and he realized what he stood to lose. But what happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when he feels secure in your love again? Do you really think he won't go back to his old ways? The seeds of doubt, once planted, were hard to ignore. That night, when William called from London, Loria found herself analyzing every word, every pause, looking for signs that Jenny might be right. You sound tired, William said over the video call. Are you feeling all right? Just a long day, Loria replied, not wanting to get into the lunch with Jenny. I miss you, he said, and the words sounded sincere, but Jenny's voice echoed in her head. He's just saying what you want to hear. I miss you too, she said, but the response felt hollow. William noticed the change immediately. Loria, what's wrong? You've been different the past few days. Nothing's wrong, she lied. I'm just tired. But William knew her too well now. He could see the distance in her eyes, the way she was pulling back from him even through the screen. Did something happen? Did someone say something to you? Loria's silence was answer enough. It was Jenny, wasn't it? William's voice was quiet, resigned. What did she tell you? It doesn't matter, Loria said, but her voice lacked conviction. It does matter. If it's making you doubt us, it matters more than anything. After a long pause, Loria told him about the lunch, about the articles and interviews Jenny had shown her. She watched his face carefully as she spoke, looking for signs of anger or defensiveness, but instead saw only sadness. Those things I said, William said slowly. They were true at the time. 3 years ago, I did believe that marriage was an unnecessary complication. I believed that because I'd never met you. I'd never felt what I feel now. But how do I know you won't change your mind again? How do I know that in another 3 years, you won't decide that love is a liability after all? William was quiet for a long moment, and Loria could see him struggling with something. You don't know, he said finally. You can't know. That's what faith is, isn't it? Believing in something without guarantees. But I can tell you this. Every day I don't tell you I love you. Every day I don't show you how much you mean to me. Feels like a waste. 3 years ago, I thought success meant building walls and keeping people at a distance. Now I know that success means having someone worth tearing those walls down for. Jenny says you're just scared of losing your assets in a divorce. William's laugh was bitter. If that were true, don't you think I would have had you sign a prenup? Don't you think I would have protected myself legally instead of emotionally? Loria realized with a start that he was right. She'd never even thought about the fact that they'd married without any legal protections for his wealth. I love you, Loria, William continued, his voice intense even through the video call. Not because I have to, not because it's convenient, but because you're the first person who ever made me want to be better than I am. You're the first person who ever made me believe that I could be worthy of being loved back. Loria was still processing William's words when her phone rang the next morning. It was Ned, and he sounded frantic. Mrs. Locklear, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to tell you something about your friend Jenny. What about her? I hired a private investigator after Mr. Locklear mentioned she was causing problems in your marriage. We discovered something you need to know. An hour later, Loria sat in Ned's office, staring at a folder full of financial documents and photographs. The evidence was damning. Jenny hadn't just disapproved of the marriage. She'd been actively working to destroy it. She's been in contact with Sam Morrison since before the charity gala, Ned explained. He's been paying her to feed him information about your marriage, about Mr. Locklear's business dealings, about your emotional state. The articles she showed you yesterday? Sam provided them to her specifically to create doubt in your mind. Loria felt sick. But why would she do this? We've been friends since college. According to the investigator's report, Jenny has significant gambling debts. Morrison offered her a substantial sum to help him get close to you, to drive a wedge between you and your husband. The betrayal cut deep. Jenny, her oldest friend, had been willing to destroy her marriage for money. There's more, Ned said gently. The investigator also discovered that Jenny has been feeding information to tabloid reporters. Some of the coldness in your marriage, some of the distance. It was exacerbated by Mr. Locklear's fear that private moments would end up in the press. Suddenly, so many things made sense. William's reluctance to show affection in public, his insistence on keeping their relationship private, his seeming coldness at social events. He'd been protecting them both from scrutiny. Loria confronted Jenny that afternoon at her hotel. Her former friend's facade cracked the moment she saw the folder in Loria's hands. "You sold out our friendship," Loria said, her voice deadly quiet. "You sold out my marriage for money." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Jenny said desperately. "Sam just wanted information about William's business practices. I never meant for you to get hurt. But I did get hurt. I almost lost the man I love because I trusted you. He's not good for you, Loria. Can't you see that? You were never happy before." "I was never happy because people like you kept telling me I shouldn't be. Because every time I started to hope that William might care for me, you were there to remind me that he was cold and heartless and incapable of love." Jenny's face crumpled. "I was trying to protect you." "No," Loria said firmly. "You were protecting yourself. You couldn't stand the idea that I might have found happiness in a life that looked different from what you wanted for me?" "What are you going to do?" Jenny asked, her voice small. "I'm going to London," Loria said. "I'm going to tell my husband that I love him and I trust him and I believe in us. And then I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that I was right to have faith in what we have." Loria arrived in London unannounced, taking the red-eye flight and going straight to William's hotel. She found him in a conference room, in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation with potential investors. Through the glass doors, she could see him in his element, commanding, brilliant, every inch the powerful businessman who'd first intimidated and attracted her. She waited in the lobby until his meeting ended, her heart pounding with nerves and anticipation. When he finally emerged from the elevator, he stopped dead at the sight of her. "Loria?" He looked exhausted, older somehow, as if the weight of their conversation had aged him. "What are you doing here?" "I came to tell you something," she said, standing up from the leather chair where she'd been waiting. "Jenny was working with Sam Morrison. She was paid to sabotage our marriage." William's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, anger, and finally, a weary sort of resignation. "It doesn't matter," he said quietly. "What matters is that her words made you doubt us. If our foundation was strong enough, nothing she said would have shaken it." "You're right," Loria agreed, stepping closer to him. "Our foundation wasn't strong enough, but not for the reasons you think." William braced himself, expecting her to confirm his worst fears. "Our foundation wasn't strong enough because we built it on fear instead of trust. You were afraid I'd leave, so you held part of yourself back. I was afraid you didn't love me, so I looked for confirmation of that fear everywhere. We were so busy protecting ourselves from getting hurt that we forgot to actually live." "Loria, I'm not finished," she said, reaching for his hands. "I came here to tell you that I'm done being afraid. I'm done looking for reasons why this won't work, instead of focusing on all the reasons why it will. I love you. William Locklear. I love your dedication, your intelligence, your dry sense of humor that you only show when you think no one's watching. I love the way you're trying so hard to learn how to express your feelings, even when it's difficult for you." William's breath caught. "Even knowing that I might always struggle with this? Even knowing that showing love doesn't come naturally to me? Especially knowing that," she said fiercely. "Because it means that when you do show me love, when you do open up, it's a choice. It's a gift you're giving me, not just instinct. Do you have any idea how precious that is?" For the first time since she'd known him, William's composure completely cracked. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she felt his shoulders shaking. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered into her hair. "When you started pulling away again, I thought history was repeating itself." "Never," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere. We're going to fight for this, both of us, every day if we have to." Their reunion was interrupted by William's phone ringing. He ignored it the first time, but when it rang again immediately, he reluctantly answered. "Ned, I told you I wasn't to be disturbed unless—" William's face went white as he listened to whatever Ned was telling him. "Are you sure?" "How is that possible?" Loria watched with growing concern as William ended the call and sank into one of the lobby chairs. "William, what's wrong?" "That was Ned," he said slowly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was saying. "The private investigator found something else while he was looking into Jenny's activities." "What kind of something?" William looked up at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Loria, the investigator discovered that your marriage to me It wasn't the first time someone tried to arrange your life. What do you mean? Your parents, the Kentons, they've been lying to you your entire life. You were supposed to marry someone else first. Loria stared at him in confusion. I don't understand. When you were 18, there was another arranged engagement to someone named David Chen, heir to a massive shipping fortune in Hong Kong. The contracts were signed, the dowry negotiated, but 3 days before you were supposed to fly to Hong Kong to meet him, he died in a car accident. That's impossible. My parents never mentioned any of this. William's hands were shaking as he continued. That's not the shocking part, Loria. The shocking part is that the car accident wasn't an accident. David Chen was murdered. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Murdered? By whom? By Sam Morrison. He's been systematically eliminating every man who gets close to you because he's been obsessed with you since you were teenagers. The investigator found evidence linking him to 3 other accidents over the years. A college boyfriend who died in a skiing accident, a business associate who died in a house fire, and now he's been trying to destroy our marriage so he can have you for himself. Loria felt the blood drain from her face. You're telling me Sam is a serial killer? The investigator believes so. And there's more. William's voice was barely above a whisper now. Jenny didn't betray you for money, Loria. Sam has been blackmailing her. He has compromising photos of her from her gambling addiction days, evidence of debts to dangerous people. He threatened to expose her and destroy her life unless she helped him break up our marriage. Oh my God, Loria whispered, sinking into the chair beside him. Jenny was trying to protect me by driving me away from you? In her twisted way, yes. She thought if she could convince you to leave me, Sam would lose interest and move on. She had no idea he was planning to kill me too. As if summoned by their conversation, William's phone rang again. This time, it was Sam Morrison himself. I think it's time we all had a conversation, Sam's voice said through the speaker. And there was something different about his tone, something cold and menacing that made both William and Loria's blood run cold. I'm in the hotel lobby. I suggest you both come down. And don't try to call for help. I have a gun, and I'm not afraid to use it if you force my hand. They found Sam waiting in a secluded corner of the hotel lobby, his hand conspicuously inside his jacket pocket. To any casual observer, he looked like just another businessman having a quiet conversation, but William and Loria could see the madness gleaming in his eyes. Sit down, Sam said quietly, his voice pleasant, but his meaning unmistakable. Both of you. They obeyed, William positioning himself slightly in front of Loria, ready to shield her if necessary. I suppose you figured it all out by now, Sam continued conversationally. Your little investigation. Very thorough work, I must say. I'm almost impressed. Why? Loria asked, her voice barely steady. Why did you kill David? Why have you been ruining my life? Sam's face softened, and for a moment he looked almost human again. Ruining your life? Loria, darling, I've been saving your life. Do you have any idea what your parents had planned for you? One loveless arranged marriage after another, selling you to the highest bidder like you were nothing more than a commodity. So, you decided to kill anyone who got close to her instead? William's voice was ice-cold with fury. I decided to protect her, Sam snapped, his mask slipping. I've loved Loria since we were children. I met her at a summer camp when she was 16 and I was 19. She was so beautiful, so pure, so innocent. I knew then that we were meant to be together. I don't even remember meeting you, Loria said, horror dawning in her voice. Of course you don't. You barely noticed me then. But I noticed you. I've been watching over you ever since, making sure no one else could hurt you the way your parents were planning to. By murdering people? William demanded. By eliminating obstacles, Sam corrected coldly. David Chen would have taken you away from everything you knew, forced you to live in a foreign country as his trophy wife. That college boy you dated was a drunk and a womanizer. He would have broken your heart. The business associate was embezzling money and would have dragged your family into scandal. And me? William asked quietly. What was my crime? Sam's eyes grew darker. You were the worst of all, because you made her love you. All the others were just infatuations, arrangements, temporary obstacles. But you made her fall in love with you, and that was unforgivable. Sam, Loria said carefully, trying to keep her voice calm. You need help. This isn't love, this is obsession. Don't, Sam warned, his hand tightening on whatever was in his pocket. Don't patronize me, Loria. I've spent 15 years planning how to give you the life you deserve, free from the people who would use you and hurt you. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even you, stop me now. What about Jenny? Gloria asked. You said you were blackmailing her. Is she safe? Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jenny is fine, for now. She's actually been quite useful, though she doesn't know the full extent of what she's been helping me accomplish. The poor dear thinks she's been protecting you from a cold, heartless husband. She has no idea she's been helping me eliminate the last obstacle to our happiness. She's not part of this, William said firmly. Let her go. Your quarrel is with me. My quarrel, Sam said, standing up slowly, is with anyone who stands between me and the woman I love. Jenny will be fine as long as she continues to cooperate. But you, William, you're a different story. What do you want? Gloria asked desperately. I want what I've always wanted, Sam replied. You. But first, your husband needs to have an unfortunate accident. A tragic heart attack, perhaps. Or maybe he'll slip and fall from the hotel balcony. These old buildings can be so dangerous. I'll never be with you, Gloria said fiercely. Even if you kill William, even if you eliminate every other man on earth, I will never love you. What you've done is monstrous. Sam's face twisted with rage. You don't know what love is, Gloria. But you'll learn. Once William is gone, once you have time to grieve and heal, you'll see that everything I did was for you. You'll understand that I'm the only one who truly loves you. You're insane, William said, slowly reaching for his phone. Don't, Sam warned, pulling a gun from his jacket. I really didn't want to do this in public, but you're forcing my hand. But Sam had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated Ned's loyalty and thoroughness. The private investigator had been tracking Sam's movements, and when he'd followed Sam to the hotel, he'd immediately contacted both the police and hotel security. Just as Sam raised his gun, armed officers burst into the lobby from 3 different entrances, shouting for him to drop his weapon. You called them, Sam accused, swinging the gun wildly between William and Gloria. I didn't, William said, his hands raised. But I'm glad someone did. Drop the weapon, one of the officers shouted. There's nowhere to run. For a moment, Sam looked like he might surrender. Then, his eyes met Gloria's, and something terrible shifted in his expression. If I can't have you, he said quietly, then no one can. He swung the gun toward Gloria, but William was faster. He lunged forward, tackling Sam to the ground, just as the gun went off. The shot went wide, shattering a window, and then the police were on them, wrestling the gun away from Sam and dragging him to his feet in handcuffs. Are you hurt? William asked frantically, checking Gloria for injuries. I'm fine, she whispered, clinging to him. Are you? I'm okay. We're okay. As Sam was led away, he looked back at Gloria one last time. This isn't over, he called out. I'll find a way back to you. I'll always find a way back to you. But his words fell on deaf ears. Gloria was safe in William's arms, and that was all that mattered. The investigation that followed revealed the full extent of Sam's obsession. His apartment was filled with photographs of Gloria, dating back 15 years. Pictures taken with telephoto lenses, images stolen from social media, even security footage from various locations she'd visited. He'd kept detailed journals documenting her daily routines, her likes and dislikes, her relationships. Jenny was cleared of all charges once the full story came to light. She'd been as much a victim of Sam's manipulation as anyone else, terrified into compliance by threats against both herself and Gloria. I'm so sorry, Jenny sobbed, when she and Gloria were finally reunited. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I could just convince you to leave William, Sam would lose interest and you'd be safe. You couldn't have known, Gloria assured her, though the betrayal still stung. He fooled all of us. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have trusted you to handle it. We all make mistakes when we're scared, Gloria said, though she wasn't sure their friendship would ever fully recover from the deception. With Sam in prison awaiting trial for multiple murders and attempted murder, William and Gloria could finally build their life together, without the shadow of manipulation and danger hanging over them. The revelation of Sam's crimes had an unexpected effect on their relationship. It made them realize how precious and fragile their love was, how easily it could have been destroyed by forces beyond their control. I almost lost you, William said one evening as they sat in their garden, finally able to enjoy the peace and quiet. Not because of my coldness or your doubts, but because of one man's twisted obsession. But you didn't lose me, Gloria replied, taking his hand. We found our way back to each other despite everything he tried to do to tear us apart. Promise me something, William said, turning to face her fully. Promise me we'll never let anyone else come between us again. No matter what people say, no matter what obstacles we face, Promise me we'll trust each other first." "I promise," Loria said, and sealed it with a kiss. They were married again 6 months later, not because they needed to be, but because they wanted to exchange vows that were truly their own, free from the shadow of Sam's manipulation and Margaret's well-intentioned meddling. This time, the ceremony was exactly what they wanted: intimate, honest, and filled with the joy of two people who had fought for their love and won. 5 years later, "Tell us the story about the bad man who tried to keep you apart," 6-year-old Catherine said, climbing onto William's lap as he sat in his study. "That's not a bedtime story, sweetheart," Loria said from the doorway, smiling at the familiar scene. "That one's a little too scary for bedtime." "But it has a happy ending," protested 4-year-old James from his spot on the floor. "The bad man goes to jail, and Mommy and Daddy live happily ever after." Both children were adopted, the decision William and Loria had made together, wanting to give love to children who needed it most. Catherine had come to them as a baby, and James had been a quiet 3-year-old who'd blossomed under their care. "The happy ending is the only part that matters," William agreed, pulling Loria down onto the arm of his chair. "Because no matter how many people try to keep two people apart, if they really love each other, love will always find a way." "Will you always love each other?" Catherine asked, the question she asked almost every night. "Always," William and Loria said in unison, and they meant it with every fiber of their being. Later that evening, as they sat on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the garden, where they'd made so many important decisions, William reflected on how much their lives had changed. "Any regrets?" he asked, their nightly ritual. "Only that we wasted so much time being afraid," Loria replied. "But then again, maybe we needed that time to appreciate what we have now. I love you, Mrs. Locklear," William said, the words coming as naturally as breathing. "I love you too, Mr. Locklear," she replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." And somewhere in the distance, if you looked closely enough, you might see the ghost of all the obstacles they'd overcome, smiling as they watched the couple who'd proven that true love really could conquer all, even obsession, manipulation, and murder. The Ice King's heart had melted completely, and in its place burned a love strong enough to survive anything the world might throw at them.